I join Rabbi Sachs in wishing much bracha and mazal to Dani and Isabella and Chazan Tibor and all of your family on the occasion of his bar mitzvah aliyah this morning. Because of the special occasion, there are some guests that are joining us here this morning, and I always hesitate in calling out anyone individually, but I have to recognize someone who's not really a guest. Batya, it's so wonderful to have you here. Batya Fader, who came in from Israel to be here, has to get a special hakarat hatov. Welcome. On a sadder note, some of you may have heard that I lost my grandfather a few days ago in Montreal, and I thank everybody for the very generous messages of condolence that I received this past week. Giving attention to the funeral meant not having a lot of time to write a sermon, but I did want to teach briefly this morning on the importance of one verse that we don't generally pay attention to in Parashat Mikkets because it's overshadowed by the drama that is playing out in the story between Joseph and his brothers. But I wanted to highlight the verse this morning. The context is Joseph succeeding in getting Benjamin to Egypt, and he's laying eyes for the first time in 20 years on on Benjamin and the rest of his brothers, and he can barely hold back the emotions. He has to go into a private room where he cries. We're so taken with the drama of the moment that we gloss over the verses that talk about the meal that they ate together. This is chapter 43, verse 32. Vayasimu lo levado. They served him by himself. Vehem levadam, and them by themselves. Velamitzrim haochlimito levadam, and the Egyptians who ate with them also by themselves. Ki lo yochlun hamitzrim le'echol et ha'ivrim, ki toeva hi le'mitzrayim. Because the Egyptians would not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. So the verse describes how everybody ate dinner. There were apparently 3 different sittings. Joseph sat alone, the brothers sat alone, and the Egyptians who were dining with them also sat alone. And the verse tells us why that's so. Ki toeva hi le'mitzrayim. It's because the Egyptians considered it an abomination to break bread with the Hebrews. The verse raises several questions. First of all, why is it an abomination for an Egyptian to eat with a Hebrew? And which Hebrews are we talking about? Is this Joseph or the brothers? And who are these other Egyptians, unnamed, who are eating in the room? One explanation comes from Onkelos' Aramaic translation of the Torah. He explains that Jews ate meat which the Egyptians worshipped, like lamb, and that is the source of their disgust with the Hebrews. I think those of us who have experienced anti-Semitism and have learned about anti-Semitism would question Onkelos' rationale. People don't hate Jews because of the things Jews do. They tend to hate Jews because of who Jews are. And Rashbam and other commentaries argue that that's what was going on. The Egyptians saw the Hebrews as an inferior people and would not lower themselves to break bread with a Jew or even eat at the same table. And Rashbam says that this anti-Semitism made no exception for Joseph, the viceroy of Egypt. The forced segregation at dinner included him. which is why the Torah says, Vayasimu lo levado. They also put Joseph alone at his own table. And the Meshech Chochmah, Rabbi Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, extends this even further, painting even a worse picture. He says, you know who those Egyptians were who were having dinner, sitting alone? That was Joseph's family. Even Joseph's family, his wife and his children, would not eat dinner with Joseph because Joseph was a Hebrew. So picture the scene the commentators are painting for us. Joseph has ascended the halls of power in Egypt. He has risen to the position of viceroy, commands nearly all the wealth in Egypt, but despite all of this, is not accepted as an equal in Egypt. Despite his power, despite his success, he is still a Hebrew, a Jew. It's really quite remarkable. But so far, this is all just me feeding to you interpretations on the story. But let me ask you a follow-up question. How do you think Joseph felt about this state of affairs? Or asked a different way, why doesn't Joseph force the issue? Why doesn't he protest? Why doesn't he respond if this is the case? Joseph had tremendous power. He certainly had Pharaoh's ear. He could have said something to him and demanded to be treated more respectfully. Well, maybe Joseph did say something and the Torah just doesn't mention it, and maybe Pharaoh refused. Or let me make a wild suggestion. Maybe Joseph was okay with it. Maybe he was fine being the alien, fine having this separation between himself and the Egyptians. Maybe it didn't bother him. And maybe he even saw some value in it. I know it's a crazy suggestion. I'm not praising segregation, but think about it. The idea that Jews ought to be distinguished and separated is not a crazy idea in the Torah. On a big picture level, this is the whole call of the Torah, to be holy. To be holy means to be distinct, to be different. And on a micro level, Judaism institutes many laws and many restrictions so that Jews should be separate. Like, for instance, the prohibition of drinking non-Jewish wine. Maybe Joseph appreciated and recognized that his traditions and beliefs set him apart, and they ought to set him apart, that he didn't need to sit at the same table as the Egyptians. I don't know whether Joseph felt that way for sure, obviously. It's just a suggestion. But I do know that this tension is at the heart of what it means to be a Jew in North America 3,500 years after this story. We should be able to relate to this question very viscerally. Like Joseph, many American and Canadian Jews have achieved tremendous financial and political success. But what happens when there are rules and customs and principles that require us to be different, that will result in us being perceived differently? How do we handle those challenges? Are we satisfied? Could we ever be satisfied sitting at a different table? I'm not talking about persecution, but I'm talking about what the late Rabbi Sachs called the dignity of difference. The idea that people can coexist by loving and respecting each other for being different, even if that difference might offend you. It doesn't begin coexistence with trying to fashion other people into our image, and certainly not by fashioning ourselves into their image. The dignity of difference. It is always so ironic to me that the world often treats Hanukkah as the Jewish Christmas. You're going to see that this year. You always see it when Hanukkah is very early in the calendar, because the Hanukkah displays in the city centers and shopping malls will stay up the whole month long, even though Hanukkah ends on Monday. It's ironic to me, not only because Hanukkah has nothing to do with Christmas, but because Hanukkah in many ways is the anti-Christmas. At the time of the Second Temple, many Jews completely embraced the cultural innovations of the Greek world. They tried to get rid of that which made them different, that which made them be perceived differently, in order to fit into the world at large, going as far, in some cases, we know this from the book of Maccabees, as to reverse their circumcisions, put idols in the temple, and replace Torah study with the study of Greek wisdom. The victory of the Maccabees was not just about some oil. It was about insisting that the Jewish table remain the Jewish table, and the Greek table can be the Greek table, despite being outnumbered and outpowered. Hanukkah is not a holiday where our ancestors overcame a physical threat. Hanukkah was about a spiritual threat. It is about the spiritual survival of Judaism. Donnie, I do not think there's any question more important for young Jews like yourself today than these questions. There is so much out there in the world that wants to erase differences between people. Our culture mocks nationalism, rejects traditions, debases religions, and picks and chooses which differences it will tolerate and which ones it will reject. Everybody, especially teenagers, have a deep desire to fit in. Nobody likes to be different. Nobody likes to be looked at funny. Everybody wants to be at the same table as the cool kids. We all want to be accepted. But one of the things I've always admired about your parents, Donnie, is the confidence that they have given you and your brothers never to be ashamed, not because you sound different or look different or pray different. The confidence to be proud of the table that you are eating at, to embrace the message of the menorah that your little flame can confront and illuminate oceans and oceans of darkness. And I hope that this pride in being different stays with you your whole life, that your sense of obligation to humanity continues to be rooted in the mitzvot that we embrace as a particular people. That is not a contradiction. It is Torat Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Elokei Yisrael, our particular identities, imbuing within us our obligations to the world. This is now your inheritance as a bar mitzvah. Joseph's own children wouldn't sit with him, and Joseph said nothing. The challenge for him is the challenge for us all, to take pride in our difference. May his courage and the courage of the Maccabees inspire us to find the same pride and joy in what makes us unique and in the differences of others too, now and throughout the year. Shabbat Shalom. And Chag Sameach.